Welcome to the ACCT session, Enrollment Lessons Learned During COVID-19, Useful Items in Post-COVID regarding enrollment. Hello, I'm Kathy Swanson, President of CLARUS Corporation, and we're pleased to bring you this session today to talk about the things that we saw that made a difference in schools during COVID that had increased enrollments. Four key areas seem to make a major difference between the institutions that started fall 20 and 30% down, which we had in the country, versus those that were flat or even up in some cases. Those four areas included presidential leadership and decision-making, changes in online learning, connectivity and online access, and communicating with students. The format of this presentation is we have 4 interviews that are recorded on each of these topics. We'll be uploading a full PowerPoint that has key takeaways from each of the speakers that they have provided, which will be accessible from ACCT. And we will also answer questions at the end of the session. So let's get started. The very first issue is the schools that we saw as we were working with. We manage digital for about 180 community colleges across the country, their digital advertising. And as we work with them closely, trying to make sure that we were moving toward a positive enrollment number in fall during COVID, one thing that really stood out was presidential leadership and decision making. Those institutions that made solid decisions, they had a plan, they made it, they didn't change it, they didn't wait till the last minute. The ones that had very consistent communication, and I know we had some presidents doing videos that never even thought they would be on a video. Those were the things, along with simple messaging, that really seemed to make a difference between institutions. When students knew what was going on, we communicated with them at all levels, and we told them very simply what we were doing. We saw institutions have more success from an enrollment standpoint. I'd like to introduce Dr. Anthony Iacono, President at County College of Morris. We were working closely with them during this time, and Tony's perspective that he'll share with you really talks about the board support that he got during this process. So I'd like to introduce our first presenter today. It is Dr. Anthony Iacono. And Tony, can I call you Tony?
Sure.
We've worked with you for a while now. As we moved into COVID and we watched COVID, institutions immediately had to make changes that you'll hear is in the presentation today that had been thought about but had not moved forward with. One of the things that I've noticed, you were actually up for summer, pretty good. You're up for fall. And so one of the things that I noticed as we were working with colleges across the country was that the presidents who were decisive, aggressive, that took action, that was clear in what actions they were taking, they tended to see a better enrollment for the fall than some of the other institutions that delayed decisions. And so what I'd like for you to share is, as you looked at COVID, and how did you work with your board to do some things that would have taken, in my guess, a ton of time if we were pre-COVID, to get some things changed and to really make those decisions and move forward so that you saw more of a positive outcome?
Sure. So, first of all, I give a lot of the credit to my board. We have an absolutely fantastic board of trustees, and they come with a very rich background of their own. Many of them come out of the business world. A few are attorneys, a few are retired educators and so forth. So they really understand urgency and what it means, even though none of us have fortunately lived through a pandemic before. But, when we saw this coming at us, we made a couple of big decisions right away, one of which was that the health and well-being of our employees and our students was the most important thing. And a close second behind that was the continuation of teaching and learning with excellence. So we had a lot of conversations. They were the most on-demand board I've ever seen, that at any point I'd ask my office, can we get the executive board on the phone or the executive board plus? They would get on the phone almost immediately. They were absolutely tremendous. I really do give a lot of credit to them. But what we decided were several key things that, let's put the safety of others first. Let's make sure we maintain a very high level of teaching and learning, and let's do things quickly. We didn't really know what this was going to involve. No one did, right? So in fact, when we decided before the state even announced that we would have to officially close, we decided, let's do that. The board was very, very supportive. We said, we don't know what this is. We don't know how it's contracted, how it's spread, et cetera. And we don't want to take chances finding out and putting anybody in harm's way. So we had given the college, we had done about a week or two of meetings when we first saw it come on the news about this is what we're hearing, this is what we're seeing, and we believe we're going to be moving in this direction of at least a temporary closure. So the college was kind of warmed up already across the campus, and I don't think it was a surprise at all when we sent out the email saying, as discussed, we do believe it's too risky for anyone to be on the campus. We are officially closed at 5 o'clock. So we didn't give people immediate knowledge, but they saw it coming. They knew it was coming basically. The next thing we had to do was to enact emergency spending powers, which our board does have. And we got the board on the phone right away and said, to run this thing virtually. Mind you, we really thought maybe for 2 or 3 weeks. I don't think anybody could have imagined here we are nearly half a year later. We need to upgrade all of our software licenses. We need to upgrade all of our accesses and so forth so we can push all this out. And literally by the time our faculty and students got home, it was out. The board chair approved it immediately. Our college council worked for us to make sure we did everything legally, which is very important, right? So we were able to move really, really quickly. And, not knowing a pandemic was coming in, but realizing the direction the world was going in, our technology department had done just a tremendous job a couple of years earlier. We did a massive tech overhaul and upgrade on the campus. We replaced most of our big box traditional machines with thin clients, so software could be pushed out from a central office. We had purchased more servers. We began moving things into the cloud. And boy, has that been really fortuitous. That allowed us to move very, very quickly. And really, what we learned was it's not just teaching online, you're running an entire college online. So those things made it doable. And that every day with the board and the administration back and forth, and we worked very closely with department chairs, key staff members. Things moved pretty fluidly and all things considered pretty smoothly.
So what were some of the key things that happened? You mentioned moving to the cloud, because I know some institutions have had some security concerns. Yeah. And I neglected to mention, you were in the middle of this because you're in Randolph, New Jersey.
Yes.
So you were one of the states that was one of the first ones shut down. I think you're maybe just now getting to go back into restaurants at 25%.
Yes. Yes.
So what were some of the key things that you learned and that you're thinking, I've got to move forward with this? This is a pre-COVID issue that I have to have board support for, and that I'm going to really have to think about as I move forward for the future.
Fundamental for us was really good communications. And we worked very hard on that on any given day, but it really became increasingly important to make sure that everyone knew what we were doing as much as possible before we were doing it in terms of the employees and the students. And that we worked very, very collaboratively with the board and then key leaders around our campus that would include deans, directors, faculty chairs, staff. Communication is our foundation, basically, right? We didn't want anyone surprised. As much as we wanted to share information, we also knew we'd learn a lot by listening to people from different areas of the college. So I like to say that everyone's got a window with a view, but the view is a little different out of everyone's window depending on what they do. Had we not held meetings frequently and had our employees and our board not been good enough to get to those Zoom meetings frequently, I don't know if it would have gone as well. It's that view out those windows that when everybody shares, you get a collective picture. We wanted to make sure our employees were safe, our students were safe, learning continued, all of our systems could continue onward. And so good communication really, really did matter. Our governor did a daily well-televised newscast, so we knew what was happening in the state at all times, which was instrumental. And then we work extremely close with our county administration and our town, Randolph Township administration. So we were on the phone with them continuously as well. So we knew what the town's plans were, what the county's plans were. All of that really, really helped us do our best work and produced a pretty seamless scenario on the whole. The biggie beyond that was continuity and not deviating. So for us, one of the really big things that, as we were growing, there were several major initiatives in motion. One was that huge tech upgrade, and probably only a few months before then, we had just finished a huge cybersecurity audit and had begun tightening up there as well. Right now, we hear cyber attacks are on the increase. So I'm glad we had all that put in place and so forth, and we continue to work very, very hard on that. The other thing was we were about halfway through a marketing strategic campaign as well. I think like a lot of schools, we've engaged in marketing, but probably haphazardly for most of our career. The challenge in higher ed is we might be really good educators. Doesn't necessarily mean you know a lot about marketing. And as a community college, we look like a lot of community colleges. At the time, we didn't put as much thought into it as we needed to or should have. We really didn't have a strategic plan. We marketed as best we thought we could. And we made a very, very conscious decision, the board and the administration, that we were going to invest a lot more time and resources here, that this was going to be critical. Again, nobody had an idea a pandemic was around the corner. But here's what I'm really proud of my board for is they hung with us. They didn't get distracted. And I think it would have been easy if, for example, when we're all listening to the governor or watching what's going on in a state that was just hit, second only to New York, and everything is closed. So you didn't need to be an economist to know revenues are going to really fall short, and budgets are going to get cut. I'm very proud of our board for not saying these things are all good, let's discontinue them until we know where we're at. Our board had a lot of vision, and their advocacy really was, now more than ever, we need great marketing. People have to know what we do, how we do it, and how it can help them stay on course, don't deviate. And working with you and your team at CLARUS, and we had another lead with us that came in and volunteered for a large number of years as well, who is a former marketing executive, and it worked really well. We were one of the few schools, I think, that was up this summer. We were up 12.6%. Fall enrollment is still coming in, where we are now just starting the registration for our 13-week, for our 7-week. So the dust hasn't all settled, but we feel pretty good about where we're at, and feel good that when those registrations wrap up, we're going to be in another solid place. So we're a little bit of an anomaly right now, and we feel pretty good about that. The marketing, as I say, because we started it, as you know, well over a year ago, wasn't designed with a pandemic in mind, but it's really making a difference. And we continue to work on that as well. We just hired a new executive director for marketing. We continue to work through the plan that you had helped develop for us. We're using all the market research, and it is instrumental. So even though we've got a lot going on, that still is at the very front of the line of our priorities. So we continue to work with that more and more and more, because look, the pandemic won't last forever, but we do know the marketplace has changed, population settlement is going to change, consumer habits are going to change. And, those are all things that you had talked to us about very early. And I think the advice that you gave us, showing the data, is probably true for a lot of schools, more than not around the country, which was you're marketing to a population that left you years and years ago. It's hard to see things on a daily basis. But when somebody brings back the data and shows you, you can't really argue with that. So it's interesting. The pandemic hasn't changed what you brought to us. It's only made it even more relevant. And it's making it a lot easier for us to make our plans so that we can navigate our way through this, but really have a great post-pandemic existence as well.
Well, and I think that one of the points you're making, and the thing I noticed watching you in regard to other institutions, was your absolute consistency in message as you move forward. And once you made a decision, it didn't vacillate.
Yeah,
and we saw others that wouldn't make decisions, and it really impacted, I think, that ultimate enrollment number for them on that side.
Yeah, we saw some of our peer schools. A lot of times, when you get hit with just an all-out financial disaster, it's cut. And we took a different approach. For us, it was invest our time, invest our resources, and we had a great payday as a result. But you know what? I emphasize to my administrators all the time on the board, it's not just about healthy enrollment for that purpose. When we lose students, we're not fulfilling our mission. They rely on us for a better life. And we don't want that disrupted either. So it's imperative that we stay focused on our mission, which is serving our students, serving our community, and a good, clear marketing plan. Yes, it'll make a difference to your bottom line, your numbers, but it'll make an even bigger difference, which is it'll help you stay on track to achieve your mission.
Right. Well, Tony, thank you so much for helping and participating.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate it. I wish I could have visited with you in Chicago, but of course we are
Indeed.
all sitting here in different locations.
That's right.
Thank you, and have a very happy rest of the semester and healthy.
Kathy, thank you. It's always a pleasure to work with you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Major difference was in online learning. We ran student focus groups early during the shutdown during COVID when we had to transition from seated classes to online. And the interesting fact that we found is that not all students were completely happy with the transition. And during that focus group, they shared with us that if their experience in online for the spring semester, when they had to transition, was going to be like that in fall semester, they were probably not going to enroll, especially if only online was offered. And so we know that success in online courses has not been as high at some institutions as others. So we'd like to share with you Dr. Nancy Sutton's observations about it and how they really worked extremely hard to make sure that the fall online experience was a very different online experience. So I am so pleased to have with me Dr. Nancy Sutton, who is Vice President of Academic Services at Parkland College. Parkland is actually located in Champaign-Urbana and has a huge four-year institution right on its doorstep. University of Illinois, that has been a real positive for them in some ways and sometimes fairly competitive, if that's a fair statement. And so as we looked at on the academic services side, online classes usually account for 15–20% of our total in a semester. And then we went into COVID lockdown. And credit to every institution that we have in the country, we immediately went to completely online, fast and quick. But when we ran some student focus groups during the semester about their experience at different institutions, one of the concerns that we heard from a lot of students was that some of their experiences with completely online and the faculty were not as positive as we would have liked to have seen. And they were concerned that if we were completely online in the fall, they might not get the best experience. And so we know that sometimes our retention in online has not been as good as C. When you guys went to this, what were some things you found during this process that you as an institution said, hey, this is an impact that we need to make sense of and deal with that's going to go past COVID to really create a great learning environment for our students?
When it first hit us, we were just going into our spring break. So in a way, we had a little bit of advantage. We extended our spring break by 1 week, giving our faculty a little more time to get ready when we told everybody we're going totally online. Obviously, some of the areas like health professions and the career areas were immediately faced with the fact that there are some things you simply cannot put online. And they had to look for what can we continue to do with the students online, and then they'll have to come back later and finish. That we knew right away. The first thing we learned was that the majority of our faculty are incredibly creative and resilient. We have a lot of faculty who had never taught online before, and others immediately banded together to try to help them. We were not a Zoom institution. We actually had Teams, Microsoft Teams kind of on the side, but it was one of those things where most of our faculty had said, why would I ever need that? So our faculty had to learn very quickly how to do those things. We have a Center for Teaching and Excellence. We have a faculty member who leads that, and she immediately rallied the troops to try to help the faculty and the students get through the spring semester. It went okay. We know not all students were completely satisfied. We had to acknowledge that there might be some learning outcomes that we did not achieve. So we encouraged our faculty to remember in the fall when the students come back, a review is a good thing. Then we focused on what we were going to do in the summer. We had some faculty who immediately revamped some of the professional development programs that we have for the faculty, one in particular, which is best practices for teaching online and hybrid courses. And we asked faculty to sign up for it. We did not compensate the faculty for signing up. We asked them to volunteer. We had over 150 faculty take the course over the summer. It was a 4-week course, a very intensive work. What are the best practices? What can you do? How can you take these things that you always thought had to be in the classroom and put them online? out of that, we really started to embrace things like synchronous learning, which the trick there is if you're going to do synchronous online, you have to make sure the students know that's what they signed up for, and they have to have the technology. But we started looking at new models, new modes of delivery, and our faculty really came through well prepared. Now, I won't say that they wouldn't have preferred maybe if we could have said, no, everything's okay, come on back to campus. But we chose to set up fall with totally online, asynchronous, totally online synchronous, hybrids where the faculty have a choice of how often the students come to campus and in small groups and whether they want the online portion to be synchronous or asynchronous. And then we introduced a flexible model, which is something we've wanted to do for 3 years. The multimodal version couldn't get takers, but suddenly faculty are seeing how this could work. So the faculty member is on campus, students that can attend will come, small groups. The faculty records using video, the entire class, discussion included, posts it online. Students who want to attend synchronously online can do it. Those who can't will view it later, and everybody has the advantage of reviewing it whenever they want. This actually, I'm hoping, is what works in the future. This is perfect for students as long as they have the access in technology. They now have a class that fits their life. If the kids get sick one day, if the school is closed, if their employer asks them to work a different schedule, gives them that flexibility. Won't work for everything, but surprisingly, the faculty who embraced it first were in our career areas, in manufacturing, in agriculture, and in health professions. And so we're piloting that, and we're hoping that that's going to be what happens. So it was really a matter of, we got the faculty together, we said we have to do this, how do we learn this new stuff? And then the faculty really, they took it off, and we're seeing a lot of new initiatives and some really incredible things. Some of our faculty that have even now been approached by other institutions and publishers to talk about whether or not the materials they built, what can we use them in a wider way. We're hopeful this is going to make a difference going forward, because we don't know what things are going to look like even when COVID's gone.
That's excellent. And I think the flexibility of your faculty was phenomenal on that side, because as a faculty member early in my career, I still adjunct teach. I get so set in my ways.
Well, I think we all did. In fact, I mean, we had some real Luddites among the faculty, and their method of teaching worked, and they knew it. They were comfortable in the classroom, and they had things that they knew worked, and that face-to-face was so important. But what's really interesting that we have started seeing now is that actually faculty find that they are engaging more with some of their students. The students who would never go to office hours will approach them through Zoom or Teams to have those discussions. We moved tutoring online, our writing lab, which was a tutoring that the faculty would do for composition. That has gone online, and you see more students feeling comfortable in that environment. So in a way, it's sort of meeting the students where a lot of them were. Now keep in mind, those are students that have the technology and the access. That became our other issue, was how do we continue to bring quality and to make this accessible to the students who might not have the technology, or who have the technology, but they're now sharing it in their home with potentially a spouse who also has to work from home, or children who are having to use it to go to school. And that was where we would have discussions about the synchronous versus asynchronous. You can't always you can't require a student to always be online at the time you want them online if their life is going to, to counter that. So that's where I'm hoping the flexible mode actually really takes off.
Well, I think it's absolutely wonderful, because I know in some of the work we've done with you guys, one of the key things is trying to meet that student in the time frame they have accessible. And our students have so many demands on their time. What were some of the things you are going to bring forward? We have a session about connectivity, but that has really become a major issue. So moving forward, what are some things that you are piloting and thinking about that's probably going to be post-COVID, or at least post-lockdown kind of situation?
Well, it's twofold. One is for the students. We, like so many other institutions, flipped immediately and started increasing the amount of loanable technology that we had. including adding MiFi's, so that students who didn't have the internet would have access to that as well. We also added internet access to some parking lots. Still testing that to see how that works. It's really hard if you don't have electricity that goes out to your parking lots. But so that's one thing. We're increasing, and we know we will continue to increase the availability of loanable technology for the students. The other side of it is really getting our classrooms ready to do this. We had traditional instructor stations. You've got a computer, you've got a screen, you've got a projector. But we didn't necessarily have cameras in the classrooms. We didn't have the ability to pick up the audio. So we began by creating carts that are mobile and can go to whatever classroom you need, and teaching faculty how to use those. And we now have increased that. We have one room that's set permanently to do this flexible mode, to be able to record in the class. We have cameras that follow the faculty as they move. We're testing a few different things, but we've built about 10 carts now, so that we can, the faculty who are testing it can take it wherever they need. Going forward, the plan would be to outfit every classroom, so that every classroom could be basically a remote, flexible classroom. And that would be, I think, a solution. As you pointed out, one of our problems has always been, how do we reach the students at the time they need? And I can't, the number of times I've said, just tell me when the students want the class, we'll build it. But there's no way to know. The flexible mode actually addresses that issue. And I know 2020 is not the year we all want to look back at, but it really will be the year that made us finally stand up and do the things we've talked about. There were so many things we've talked about, really increasing the outreach to the faculty and teaching them how to teach online. We have a lot of great teachers, but we never really spent the time to dig into how do you really do it well, and to encourage others to do it. We're doing that now. We've talked about the flexible mode, never started it. This will be the year that we actually, had to do it. And I think a lot of good will come out of it. It will also be the year that will be when we realized a lot of jobs can be done remotely. It gives us a better understanding of really what the community needs. It has actually opened up our awareness of the number of students whose access to education is limited by the technology, and led us to address that. So I'm trying to look at positive, the good things that are going to come out of this.
I'm absolutely tickled you're looking at the positive, because you're right. Many of these things we knew, we just couldn't get enough momentum to move forward with.
Right.
I really appreciate the time. I appreciate you participating in this format, because as I told one of the presenters, I've learned editing skills now that I never really wanted to have on a video situation.
Yes,
I think all of us we've gained some things out of this that we knew we needed to do, but we didn't necessarily want to move. And I think maybe another thing that boards need to think about is that they may see additional technology requests coming in front of them.
Right.
And I tongue-in-cheek for years have said, if I can't get through your online application, then I'm not going to survive in the classroom.
Right.
That was tongue-in-cheek, but I think it's true.
Right.
And we can't survive unless we really move that learning model in a way that you say we can really meet them where they're at.
There was a time when we used to always say you shouldn't use technology just for the sake of technology. When PowerPoint was new and everybody wanted to use PowerPoint in a presentation, and we were inundated with a lot of slides with way too many words and too much craziness. But now I think we have experienced really what it is technology can do for us. And rather than separating people, it actually, with the use of the Zoom and the remote learning and the way faculty have embraced it, I think it actually is going to help. We can make sure people have the access. It actually does bring the student a little closer in.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for participating. And you'll be pleased to know I just did my first all-college presentation Zoom using infographics. So all of us can continue to move forward. So
yes, we can. Yes, we
Dr.
can.
Sutton, thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Even prior to COVID-19, what we saw was connectivity was an issue for a lot of students in rural areas and even some inner city students. They were primarily using their smartphones, for hotspots, or they had no access. We've had a couple of institutions, and I even live in an area where if you walk outside in a certain place, you have to climb up to a tree to actually get access. And so many students were thrown in complete disarray during COVID because they were so concerned about trying to move into an environment of completely online learning where they really did not have good access to do so. Our next speaker today is Dr. Quentin Johnson, and he is president of Southside Virginia Community College in a rural part of Virginia. And he is going to share with us some real key things that they've learned during this process about the connectivity and access and what they'll be doing in the future. On this section, we have Dr. Quentin Johnson joining us, president of Southside Virginia Community College. I've had the pleasure of working with him at a couple of different institutions. Yes. And really Southside has about 4,000 students, and it covers, it seems like if you've driven at the southern half of Virginia, it's a rural area. You've got multiple locations and centers, unlike one of the institutions that we're talking to today that has 20,000 students in one place. Your 4,000 is scattered. It's rural. I live in a rural place, so I appreciate that fact, but you've got connectivity issues. And so Dr. Johnson, as you went into the pandemic and we went into closure, and on the East Coast, I think you guys had more closure faster and quicker than we saw in other parts of the country.
Yes.
You already had connectivity problems that you're trying to work with your students. As you look at what happened and the things you did, can you talk about what were the things that you found that we really have to continue to address that COVID even made more difficult for students that we've got to really think about for the future?
Yes, well, thank you for the introduction and thank you for the opportunity to share with you. COVID brought, as you know, to us dynamics of engaging students that we've never had before. Our 4,200 square mile service area is as you've stated, wrought with internet and connectivity issues for our students, faculty, and staff. So when COVID came in, our community college system shut down. We shut our buildings completely to the public and the students. There were a couple of elements that were exacerbated. We have a high percentage of students who are first generation college goers. We don't have a transportation system anywhere within our service area. And so students very often had to come to campus prior to COVID, come to our parking lots, come to our buildings, and spent significant hours on our campuses and at our external centers in order to get their work done. The second element was that because we have such a high percentage of low income first generation college goers, those students are high touch. And so losing the ability for our faculty and staff to sit and engage students, which is a significant piece of the work that we do, was problematic. So we began by taking a look at identifying students without broadband technology. So we have large numbers of students without broadband technology. And so, but how do you identify them if they can't come to campus or come to a center? And so many of our faculty, we asked our faculty to identify students who did not have access or who were not responding to the transition to online modalities for teaching and learning, and to work with those students. And so many of the students were just not communicating at all. And so that we worked with our faculty and our teams to put together letters that we mailed out. We did some extra calling. We set up call trees and documented that effort. And that was an intensive process. So identifying students was the first piece and the most difficult piece. And across a 10-county service area, that was a huge piece for us. The second piece, the second strategy that was used was faculty developed individualized plans. Faculty worked directly with identified students to develop individualized education plans for completion. And so the work and the hours that went into calling students, connecting with them, writing, following up with them. There were many faculty and staff that actually rode out the students' homes and their communities. It was amazing the work that was done. But the individualized work was critical in a couple of ways. Students were wondering, well, how do I complete my work if I don't have internet access? Two, what's my grade going to be? And so the next strategy was actually in grading. We as a community college system, the VCCS, Virginia Community College System, we're one of 23 community colleges within that system, decided to use incompletes and to adopt the pass, no pass grading system to minimize the effect of COVID on disrupting the students' grading process and their GPAs. And then the next thing, I think an important piece that then followed, this is all going at the same time, computer access and internet locations. Our IT team took measures to extend Wi-Fi connectivity further into our parking lots on our main campuses as well as our off-campus centers. So expanding technology was an important part of that. Our student success teams then updated and made available lists of free Wi-Fi throughout our service areas. So libraries, restaurants, hospitals, town centers. We identified, I think it looked like about 100 different locations throughout our 10 county service area. And we put that information in both on our website and we sent it to students. So that piece made it possible to give students an opportunity to come to our parking lots, and not just students, our faculty and staff, because many of our faculty and staff don't have internet access or have poor internet access. We expanded hours in our computer centers and classrooms. We added computers in classroom spaces. Students were able, and faculty and staff were able to RSVP, to reserve a spot on our campuses and in the various locations, and it made a difference. So the free Wi-Fi piece in our localities, Wi-Fi at our SVCC locations, and computer access, expanding computer access, were all parts of those puzzles. So when you put these strategies together, it has put us in a place where we are now benchmarking the work we're doing, because and I think it's important for me to share, Dr. Swanson, that we, having just recently completed a comprehensive marketing and enrollment audit with the CLARUS Corporation, thank you. We now have a framework and a roadmap on how we create and implement our strategic enrollment management plan. But in putting that plan together, there are short-term, interim, immediate things we have to do, and long-term strategies. And so we are talking within that framework, strategic enrollment management, of putting benchmarks in place on the strategies and activities that we're doing relative to COVID. That how do we reach out to students? How do those activities impact students coming back and retention? How do these strategies impact recruitment? So we can't do this just as a one-time shot kind of deal. The work that we're doing, the strategies that we're implementing need to be strategic. They need to be, we need to assess their effectiveness, and we need to continue to build on these strategies to become even more effective in the future.
So Dr. Johnson, given your area, if you hadn't have had those offsite centers that lots of schools don't have now, the internet access would have been even worse. And I live in the middle of nowhere in Nebraska, and I understand exactly what your students are going through. If I can't stream a Netflix, I can't stream an online class. Right. And I had to solve it by having a company put a solar powered repeater in my pasture. So as you move forward, are you seeing more community partnerships, or how do you see solving this? Because it's going to be an expensive long-term issue that really is not, it's not something you can just solve quickly.
No, and it's an excellent question, a dynamic that impacts not only Southside Virginia, but our nation. I think we need to begin, just on a personal note, we really need to look at broadband access and internet access like we do utilities, electricity, gas and light, telephone. The infrastructure that's in place across the Commonwealth of Virginia and across our nation is set up to supply and support those important utilities. What we're doing now specifically is we are a partner with Microsoft. Microsoft has a major call center. I think their world's largest call center in our area. And as a partner with Microsoft, we are sitting down with our Microsoft partners to talk about how we can expand access to students in ways that we've not been able to in the past. And so those conversations are just beginning. But I think that it's partnerships like this that will provide us an opportunity to look at technology, learn new technology, new possibilities with that technology brings, that will enhance our ability to serve our students more effectively. But without those partnerships and the resources the partnerships bring, we're stuck. We're stuck saying, okay, this is a problem. We don't have the resources to do the things we need to do to deliver our mission. And so you bring up an excellent point with regard to partnerships. Takeaways from this process are two. One, and as I've stated earlier, we must be strategic in our processes relative to COVID-19. Recruitment, retention, marketing, communication need to be strategic. We need to include our strategies in our strategic enrollment management plans. We've learned that expanding Wi-Fi to our parking lots is helpful. We need to continue to do that. And I've come to my campus at 10 o'clock at night, and there were students and faculty in the parking lots. And the parking lots are pretty well lit, but it shows the dedication and the hard work that it takes during these times for students and faculty to do their work. We've expanded online IT help desk services, and those expanded online IT help services were around the clock. And so we were able to be pretty effective with those expanded IT help desk services. We explored the roadblocks of using certain devices to access LMS, Canvas, and develop guidance for students. We explored the use of minimal technology standards for admission to the college, removing barriers that we hold so true, but making sure that those barriers were, particularly in a COVID-19 environment, are not the reason why students don't come and enroll. We stocked more electronic devices in our bookstores, so financial aid could be used to purchase them. And we have seen a significant increase in the purchase of electronic devices, computers, and et cetera. We need to advocate and lobby for better broadband services in our rural area, and that's a legislative issue, but it's one that is ongoing. It's a national issue, and like you, without broadband, our students can't be successful. Our faculty can't be successful, and so it's important that we have conversations and that we share lessons learned and best practices, not only across the Commonwealth of Virginia, but across from state to state and across the nation. Because if you're doing it and you're successful at doing it, I want to know. If I'm doing it and our faculty and staff and students are being successful by implementing these strategies and processes, I want others to know that that makes our colleges better. It helps us be more effective in delivering our mission, and it makes our country the best country in the world to live in. So thank you.
Dr. Johnson, thank you so much for helping out with this. I appreciate working with you as always, and I've already found 2 or 3 other cute things that you just said that I'm going to add to my list of sharing with colleges, especially about the device piece. So you have a lovely rest of the week, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you for the opportunity, And I appreciate what you're doing with this conversation. Thank you. Take care.
The final issue that really made a difference for the institutions that we saw success in enrollment versus those that had difficulties was communication with the student and communication with all its constituents. The last 5 years has been extremely difficult in terms of communicating with students regardless. We've had increasing uses of digital, and the other thing is it's just fragmented. They pay attention to texting at some time, to email at some time. They might answer their cell phone or not at some time. Landlines for this market is basically gone. And the other real issue when we're trying to communicate with our potential students, even current students, the rule of thumb is that you have to see or hear something 15 times before you see or hear it, because there's so much noise in so many channels. The other thing is that institutions tended to rely on their social media channels like Facebook and other to communicate, but what we find is only about half of the students attending actively are looking, viewing, and have liked the social media channels, and email is not always viewed, even though we try it as a major communication vehicle. The other thing is that during this time frame, traditional media really is not viewed by students. And the major communication methods, traditional that did work, radio, billboard, we couldn't use them in COVID simply because I was not outside, I was not in my car. It was very interesting. We do have a new method, geofencing, where we can put an electronic fence around something and deliver ads to it. And I had a marketing director call me and say, oh no, geofencing is dead because we can't geofence the high school, they're not there. Well, the beautiful part is it has evolved geofencing into addressable geofencing, where we can actually take a list of high school addresses, their home addresses, and drop ads into the home, hitting devices of parents with one message and students with another. And truly, the institutions that reached out to those new digital methods that really spent money communicating, dropping ads, used their social media, email, direct mail, traditional media, actually did a better job with respect to getting that communication and sharing information. And the sharing of information is what really led students to come to the institution. I'd love to introduce Mike Barzacchini today. I'm Director of Marketing Services at Harper College. And Mike's going to share some of the thoughts that he has had and some of the things that they did to really make that communication with students work.
I am so pleased to introduce Mike Barzacchini, and it took me forever to get Mike's last name right. He's Director of Marketing Services for Harper College. Harper's located in Palatine, Illinois, has an enrollment of about 23,000 students, credit students. It's in the west suburbs of Chicago. We've worked with them a lot. They have 1 million people in their service area, and they have a very diverse service area. And so Mike, in your job in marketing, what we'd really like you to share with us, we've had drastic changes over the last few years in communication anyway. But the COVID crisis, I think, really brought some things out that we were doing that maybe during COVID needs to really be done as we move forward. So from your position in trying to communicate all of these very disparate things that we were trying to tell everyone, could you share with us some of the key things you saw that are going to be so important as we move forward into the future, and really the takeaways from COVID, if you would?
Thanks, Kathy, and I appreciate the opportunity to share this information with you and the audience today. You're right. You know, there have been a lot of things that have been, I guess, for lack of a better word, trends over the recent years in terms of getting to know more about our audiences through data, using technology to target our audiences. And if anything, this COVID crisis and other events this summer just heightened that need to be more audience aware and serve them with messages that best meet and target their needs. So, you know, we were already heading into summer with a fully formed campaign in March when it became apparent that this crisis was going to be something that we all were going to be living with for a while. And so when it became apparent that we were moving off campus, we were going to evaluate what we needed to do for summer, we called a halt to our outbound market, any of our marketing that we were doing, any of our messaging that was marketing messaging for about 2 weeks that doesn't mean we stopped. I mean, during that time, we were communicating messages from the institution that were very important to our audiences in terms of how we were going to serve them, how we were going to reach out for students that were in need, those kinds of things that we continued to do throughout the summer and into the fall. But we also did a lot of deep listening. And I think that's probably the biggest trend out of this that's going to live with us even once we're through this pandemic, is understanding as our audiences niche and as they become more diverse, and as they have, whether it's economic diversity, whether it's, cultural diversity, racial diversity, where they're at in their employment cycle, ages that we're serving now are more diverse than ever before, really understanding where they are and where we can meet them with their needs. We know we can. As a community college, we're flexible. We are, we're nimble. We've proven that over the last 6 months if we haven't proven anything else. But it's not enough to just be flexible and nimble. We have to understand where that flexibility needs to meet the audience. So for those 2 weeks that we kind of shut down marketing messages, we did social listening through social media. We were in touch with all our frontline employees who were talking to students. We were tracking sentiment and what, because as confused and as trying to learn to adapt to this as we were, amplify that to, the adult students in our audience, the high school students who are thinking about fall, whoever it might be. And we were able to retool our messaging and also retool the channels that we were going to use to make them even more targeted and more, more appropriate for the time and the situation. So what we led with, and I have on my slide just a few brief bullet points, kind of an overview, but what we led with was really thinking about empathy, connection, and solutions. We wanted people to understand that in our audience that we were going through this together. We know that they were going through some incredible challenges that they've never faced before. Let's face it, community colleges always serve populations that are challenged, whether it's first-generation students, whether it's economic disparity, whatever it might be. But now we were all facing these similar challenges that were affecting us different ways depending on our personal circumstances. So empathy was a huge part of it. Then connection, letting them know that we were here to serve them, even though the way we serve them might be differently, in some cases incredibly heightened. And then providing solutions, everything from those initial emergency funds for students who just needed help making rent or finding out how they were going to accomplish transportation issues, to now providing technology, whether it's Wi-Fi hotspots or Chromebooks or whatever it might be for students. And that's carrying through into the fall in a lot of heightened ways. And then also, I know our primary focus is thinking about enrollment marketing, but we turn that messaging to our donors and to our employees and to our alumni to let them know how they could be part of the solution. Our student emergency fund, which was, we had a great outpouring of contributions to that that's continuing through today. So that whole idea of messaging with empathy, connection, and solutions, and that really started with a great deal of listening. And I think, this pandemic is far from over. And even when it's whatever over is going to look like, we're going to be a changed institution. We're going to be a changed community, and we're going to need to make sure we're investing through formal, through research, formal listening, but also informal listening, and we're more tuned in on our social channels than ever before. The other trend that was there with us before the pandemic, but is even more heightened now, is that targeting. I said to you, Kathy, for many years, and you and I have done presentations together, that every market is niche. There's no such thing as a mass market anymore, right? Because everybody comes with their own situations, their own challenges, their own goals and aspirations. And the COVID pandemic only heightened that. So we became even more targeted, doing things. I know we've worked with you on a number of these campaigns, like addressable geofencing. So we could find specific targets. In this case, one of the examples, and we had a number of these different cases, but one example was students who are in our district who graduated our high schools, had either gone on to a four-year school or planning to go on to a four-year school. Now COVID-19 threw all those plans in disarray. That was, a lot of our outreach for summer and even into the fall, and even now, because you have students that have gone to four-year schools and found out that maybe this isn't going to work for them and are either coming back or making decisions about spring. But to being able to target through addressable geofencing right down to their household and sending, again, specific messages that connect them to the way the institution can help them best. And we did this with other populations too. The other really, and I have to give a lot of credit to my staff, including my senior, my associate director, who really worked with our media planners and did some really smart shifting on the fly. Being in the Chicago market, we still see things like drive time radio as having a value for brand and overall awareness. So for fall and for later summer, we plan drive-by radio. Well, guess what? Nobody was commuting, right, in April, May, June, and even now the commuting numbers are down. So we shifted that spending to OTT, to over the top, to streaming networks. So we put messaging again to connect with people in our district, targeted folks through like if they're watching Hulu, if they're watching YouTube, if they're watching Facebook, whatever that might be. We had a tremendous response in connecting people. And in some cases, those were enrollment messages. In some cases, those were messages connecting them to resources that the college provided, blending those things together, making that connection. So that's kind of the technology side of it. But it was really important too that we didn't just rely on technology, and we also looked at things like high touch, right? Because people were home. We know for years, and I know you and I have had these discussions too, Kathy, that volumes of mailbox volume, the mail you get at home, is dropping. So, it's kind of like everything old is new again. We've seen a place for direct mail the last 5 years. It's been very popular. So one thing we routinely have done in the summer leading into fall is do this really oversized postcard. I mean, I wish I had a copy to hold up, but you can almost use it for a tablecloth. Oversized postcard to every district resident. And I call it our opportunity mailer, because it talks about things like information sessions you can go to. It talks about financial aid. It talks about special kinds of outreach that we're doing. Well, we do that one time, usually in an enrollment cycle. But again, thinking about the special circumstances of the pandemic and people being in their homes and maybe looking for some type of connection, we, along with the high-tech kinds of things we did that 3 times with series of messages that were not only about summer and fall enrollment, but again, how can you get connected with technology? Do you need a Wi-Fi hotspot? What are some other ways that you can interface with the institution to get the help you need to make decisions about going forward with your education, and maybe just figuring out some life circumstances? So that balance of high tech and high touch, and it really is the blending of both, especially in times like these, because again, especially for community colleges, you're often, even though you might be targeting that graduating senior in the household or that sophomore who went away to University of Iowa and might be coming back, you're also reaching everybody else in that household too, like the parents, other influencers, younger siblings, whatever it might be. So it's really important to be able to kind of blend those messages together in a very high-tech and high-touch way. High-touch also comes through, in the great work that our frontline staff did at Harper, our enrollment services folks, in terms of the texting campaigns, the calling campaigns, the online chat. And it's our job to make sure people know they have access to be able to call that number for our one stop, to be able to engage in an online chat, to go to an information session. So my last point, so I talked about messaging, I talked about targeting, I talked about high tech and high touch channels. My last point is really about alignment. You need to make sure you're aligned within your marketing initiatives, because let's say I do a wonderful campaign with you where we're doing geofence targeting and we're really having great message penetration, people are responding, and my landing page isn't ready. Or the phone number. I mean, people left campus, not our campus necessarily, but people I know left campuses where they didn't update voicemails, right? Where they didn't do some of the basic kinds of things, where they still had information on websites that talked about come on campus for services. And those services weren't available on campus. So really planning your campaign, aligning that campaign all the way through at all the touch points. And then there's the alignment with the other functions at the college. So again, are we aligned with our admissions outreach folks? Are we aligned with the great work that our wellness folks are doing to outreach to the community in terms of health and wellness? Are we aligned with our advisors who just doing amazing, incredible work? And are we amplifying what they do? Because if they're creating really great video content, really great Instagram chats, whatever it might be, are we then taking those and turning them around and amplifying them on the institutional channel? So, we always need to be strategically and tactically aligned with our other front-facing and academic services on campus. But again, a situation like the pandemic just heightens that awareness that we can't take anything for granted. And I think where we've had real success as a college, when we've been the most closely aligned with carrying those messages forward across all those offices. So those were kind of my 4 main points. It's really brought to light that we're going the right direction with messaging, and we need to kind of keep growing the direction we're going in. We're only going to be more targeted in delivering those targeted messages to specific audiences. The audiences are only going to become more specific. I think the channels are going to remain high tech and high touch, and I think that every enrollment cycle, we're going to see the mix shift with what's going on with technology, but what's also going on in our, in our current environment. And then aligning the work that we do as a marketing team and with our vendors, and also with the work that we're doing, with our campus partners.
And one last thing to think about when we talk about student communication, the institutions that seem to do really well, and especially retain students during that spring semester when we had to completely transition to online, establish what they called CARES teams. Several of them had different names for it, but basically they brought together a group of individuals from student service, from academic service, from across the campus, and they used high frequency, high touch reach out to those students to help them transition, to solve problems. If they didn't see them for a day or two, in terms of the Zoom meetings for the class, they were reaching out to them, they were calling them. They were using multimodal communication and high frequency. And that's something that we knew before COVID we needed to do, but something that was absolutely imperative during COVID and probably post-COVID to actually maintaining students and keeping students with us on a regular basis. Well, I've been Kathy, I'm Kathy Swanson, president of CLARUS. I'm Kathy Swanson, president of CLARUS Corporation. I would like to thank so much our participants in the panel today. We appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. If you have anything that you need to ask, I believe there's a chat function available. And if you would like a copy of this full PowerPoint with the key takeaways written, just visit our website or you can download it from the ACCT site. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. And if there are any questions, please chat them.